I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. Were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime.
You said there's no evidence of a crime. I'm showing you. Here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop the limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell. So should the men who patronized his operation. And as we sit here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
Oh, you're going to like this. Because for weeks, members of Congress have demanded that Pam Bondi release all the Epstein files. So she finally did, but they didn't expect what happened next. See, each member was given their own personal login, and they had to use the secure DOJ system to view the documents. It's normal for sensitive files. But during the hearing, Bondi mentioned that the activity on the system is logged. In other words, they know what each member searched for and which files they access. Oh, they did not like that. Some of the lawmakers said that tracking their activity raises concerns about independence. But secure systems like this always keep logs to protect information. So why would you have an issue about it unless your search terms seem pointed or suspicious? I mean, everyone would naturally search their own names, but what if they search terms that reveal something deeper? Now, we can't call this a trap because they demanded that she grant them access to everything. I'm pretty sure that this falls under that oversight that they're always talking about. So I guess in this case, we should be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. What do you guys think?
As you all know, I serve on the Oversight Committee, and a lot of you have been asking what's going on with the Epstein investigation, and the answer is nothing at the moment in the Oversight Committee because my Republican colleagues have stopped having official hearings in the main committee because they're afraid that we're going to hold Pam Bondi in contempt. And so rather than having committee hearings, which would allow for procedural motions like contempt motions, they're having roundtables instead. And let me just say, this is not by accident. If you're in the majority, you don't have roundtables. That's a tool if you don't control the space. And so it's very clear that these guys are basically trying to skirt around accountability. And already we know that Pam Bondi has been trying to get out of her deposition. We know that Todd Blanche has been on a media tour telling people to move on from the Epstein files. And let us just be clear. We are not moving on. We are going to demand justice and accountability. And we are going to make sure that we continue to follow this case everywhere it goes.
Epstein is becoming Epstein. Tell us if you're in Epstein files. We help you. We can forgive you. But if we find out that you never come out to say that you were in Epstein, I don't know what you're going to explain to the Americans.
Reading a surprising statement at the White House on Thursday afternoon, First Lady Melania Trump denied having ties to Jeffrey Epstein or any knowledge of his crimes.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island.
It was not immediately clear what prompted the First Lady to speak out about this issue now. The seemingly out-of-the-blue message came as her husband, President Donald Trump, and his administration had finally seemed to move past more than a year of controversy surrounding Epstein, especially as the Iran war had become all-consuming in Washington. Her statement came a day after the Department of Justice indicated that former Attorney General Pam Bondi will not appear for a scheduled deposition next week before a House committee investigating how the government handled its investigation into Epstein. A spokeswoman for the House Oversight Committee said Wednesday that Bondi, who was ousted by President Trump last week, will not appear for the deposition, quote, since she is no longer Attorney General and was subpoenaed in her capacity as Attorney General. Bondi has faced scrutiny for how the Justice Department handled what are known as the Epstein files. The department's release of millions of case files on Epstein contained multiple errors and ran behind a deadline set by Congress.
Behind the scenes, he was telling all of us, he was telling Mike Johnson, he's telling everybody, telling Pam Bondi, people are going to get hurt. And who he was talking about, what he told me on the phone, our final conversation, he told me, he said, my friends will get hurt. So he's talking about his friends. He told me, people you know, Marjorie, people at Mar-a-Lago, they're going to get hurt. And I said, people have already gotten hurt. There's over 1,000 women that have been raped by Jeffrey Epstein and are accusing others. And they've told the FBI, they've told the police, they have been trying for years to get justice for this. Right. I was like, people already have been hurt.
Where do things stand with former Attorney General Pam Bondi? You said you were planning to file contempt charges against her for not appearing before your committee. So where does that stand?
Well, stay tuned, because we have been getting those charges ready. In fact, we've been giving her additional time for her to actually work with our committee to schedule the actual subpoena date. We have heard absolutely nothing from her. Nothing from any of her legal representatives, nothing from the DOJ. So she has left us no choice. She didn't show up to her scheduled deposition, which we have under law for her to actually come. The Republicans also agreed to that subpoena. They released it with Chairman Comer. And we've heard absolutely nothing from the AG. But what we do know is that half of the files have not been released. Survivors have been, of course, as you know, doxed and put in danger because their names and information have been put actually in the files that were supposed to be redacted. And so there has been absolutely, in this case, a massive cover-up that's been directed by the AG, and she has not answered her questions. So she must come under oath, and stay tuned, because imminently that contempt charge is going to be filed, and we expect that process to go through and for her to show up in front of our committee.
It was a bipartisan subpoena, as you pointed out, but now Republican Congressman Scott Perry, who backed that subpoena, told The Hill recently that he wants to see how talks shake out with her personal attorney and, quote, I don't know what the point of the whole exercise is at this point. She's a private citizen now. Congressman, are you losing momentum to hear from Bondi?
Look, I think maybe some Republicans want to continue covering up for her, but absolutely not. She has a responsibility to respond to that subpoena. And perhaps Donald Trump and Mike Johnson and James Comer think and want to continue to tell the American public that this is a hoax. The real truth here is that the survivors deserve justice, and we're not going to stop fighting on this issue, on this investigation around Jeffrey Epstein, until we get justice for the survivors. Pam Bondi led a massive cover-up. Todd Blanchard now is involved in a cover-up. The American public just want transparency. Why can't they release the other 50% of the files to the Congress and to the public? And so they want to slow us down. They want to tire out the American public, but that absolutely is not going to happen. We're going to fight until we get the truth out.
The House Oversight Committee isn't holding hearings anymore because members of Congress keep subpoenaing people connected to Jeffrey Epstein. There hasn't been an actual hearing since early March, when Attorney General Pam Bondi was subpoenaed in order to come explain to the committee her role in what looks to be a cover-up underway in order to protect those implicated in the Epstein files. Bondi skipped her deposition, which is against the law, but the committee can't hold her in contempt until they meet. So committee chair Representative James Comer has stopped holding hearings. Instead, they're holding round tables, like the one going on down the hall right now. Except round tables are basically like playing house. There's no rules, no consequences for lying, and official motions can't be voted on. But it does let members of Congress say that they're meeting, so they can create the illusion that they're doing something when really they're not. To get an idea of how pointless these round tables are, until this year, there had only been 2 in the past 3 years. And now, ever since Bondi's been facing contempt charges, there's been 5 roundtables. Subpoenas and public testimony have proven to be incredibly effective with Trump administration officials. 3 have quit this year alone as a result of tense hearings. But this pressure only works when those hearings have teeth. As an example, at least 2 other people haven't been issued subpoenas but have been invited to speak before the Oversight Committee regarding Epstein's criminal operation. But since they weren't subpoenaed, they didn't show. And they're not going to. And neither's Bondi, until the Republican-controlled oversight holds hearings again and uses this power to provide a check on the executive branch.
Here it is. It's official. Signed by the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Attorney General Pam Bondi. just got served with a subpoena over her handling of the release of the Epstein files. The letter that was attached to the subpoena and was released publicly said the committee has questions regarding the Department of Justice's handling of the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his associates and its compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. As Attorney General, you are directly responsible for overseeing the department's collection, review, and determinations regarding the release of the files pursuant to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And the committee therefore believes that you possess valuable insight into these efforts. Now, there have been accusations from both Republicans and Democrats that Bondi and her Department of Justice have been hiding, deleting Epstein file documents that they find problematic for whatever reason, that the DOJ has released victim names and then redacted names of people who should not have their names redacted. The law overwhelmingly.
According to a new report from the Washington Post, there is panic taking place inside of Donald Trump's DOJ because staffers have no idea what is going to happen to their agency since Pam Bondi was fired. Because here's the issue. Donald Trump has not officially nominated anybody to replace her. Attorney General of the United States is a pretty important position, yet Donald Trump can't be bothered in the middle of his war that is totally over and we're totally winning and it's totally going horribly for him, but he just hasn't gotten around to it. And staffers are terrified about what the replacement and, of course, the potential replacements will do to impress Donald Trump. See, back when Pam Bondi was the Attorney General for like the last year, reports had come out saying that these DOJ lawyers working on cases that Bondi was directing them to go do, they knew these were bad cases. They knew they could get them, the lawyers handling them for the DOJ, into legal trouble, and they worried they could even lose their law licenses or be sued by the people they're going after. So a lot of them refused to do a lot of the prosecutions. They resigned en masse, but some of them did go along with it, hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. But now that Bondi's gone, because those lawyers were not successful, these same people are now terrified at what her successor is going to force them to do. Because now we have the bar. And the bar is, if you don't put my enemies in prison, you're gonna lose your job. So whoever replaces Bondi is going to have to continue pushing those failed prosecutions. But it's not the Attorney General that goes to court. It's not the Attorney General that does those court filings or impanels a grand jury. Those are the people that work at the DOJ. And those are the people that would be held legally liable, perhaps even criminally liable, for doing this. So right now, according to this report, there's basically 3 frontrunners to be nominated for the
Something's going on with the Epstein files. Pam Bondi fired. They took her portrait, stuck it in the trash can at the DOJ. Todd Blanche is now the acting director of the DOJ. And he is a big problem. He's the one who gave the sweetheart deal to Ghislaine Maxwell. And obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell, more than anybody, probably only first to Trump, knows all of the stuff about Jeffrey Epstein. I would say the second person that knows everything is Donald Trump. And here is Todd Blanche gaslighting and lying on Fox News this very day. Play the clip.
You have the authority to go ahead and release more, do you not? And you have the authority to go to Congress, perhaps?
No, we have released everything. So listen, we reviewed 6 million pieces of paper. What we released was anything associated with the Epstein files. So there, we are not sitting on a single piece of paper. Nothing that should be released. If we find something else tomorrow, we'll release it. I don't anticipate we will. So the misguided assumption that there's more to be released is because we reviewed millions and millions of pages within the department, millions of which had nothing to do with Epstein. So it's not as if we looked at a document and said, we're not going to release that.
That's exactly what you did. That's exactly what you did. This is going to be a huge problem. We're absolutely not going to release it. And any notion, if we find something, we'll release it, that you that you're going to release it. First of all, Pumps, remind me, is this not the lawyer who marched into federal court and took 34 L's for Donald Trump? He hired the biggest loser lawyer to work for him in the government, right?
Yes, it was state court. Not that anybody cares about that but me.
Okay.
But here's the thing about Todd Blanche. He uses the word salad legalese of that should be released. And I would just ask, where are all the videos? Jeffrey Epstein's entire house was wired, and every person that ever went in there said there's video cameras everywhere, which you could block out the victim's face. I mean, we are in an age where that can happen. So I call bullshit on this. He knows they're not going to release the shit that's against Trump. And so my question is, how bad fucking is the stuff they haven't released? Because the stuff they have released is extremely damaging.
Well, speaking of damaging, somebody might know exactly how bad all of this stuff is. Pumps, you may remember last week, Melania did an impromptu press conference, right? Where she said the lies must stop, right? So she was married to this man or in a relationship with this man for 2 decades named Paolo Zampalli. This guy is cankles deep in the MAGA world. They have a 16-year-old son together. The evidence that I have found goes as follows. Amanda Ungaro came to the United States 30 years ago on the Lolita Express with 30 other models. And she ends up in a relationship with this guy. And let me show you how.
You apologize to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before, Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General
Twice.
Bondi.
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
that's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer. So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I am reclaiming my time, and when I reclaim my time, it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady's reclaimed her time.
I'm not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only to then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Ghislaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up, and I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level apologize
now recognizes the chair
on what you have done.
The time of the gentlelady expired. The gentlelady, you have no time to yield back. We appreciate that. We appreciate the thought.
Did y'all see what Melanie Stansbury said after the meeting with the Epstein victims? Watch this.
But I want to be clear that what we heard today is a cover-up. And it is a cover-up of epic proportions, a cover-up involving the United States government, the justice system, rich and powerful individuals, a cover-up potentially involving foreign countries and foreign actors. And yes, here today in this House, as our colleagues are up in the House chamber in the Rules Committee, a cover-up by the Republicans in this chamber. Because as you will find out in the coming days and weeks, this goes all the way to the top. So let's be clear about that. There has been a systemic failure of the justice system for decades. a systemic failure to hold people who are powerful and have money to account, and that has allowed not just hundreds, but potentially thousands of women, not only in the United States, but around the world, to be bought, sold, and trafficked, not only by Jeffrey Epstein, but by his associates and his rich and powerful friends. And as these stories come forward, whether they're stories that have already been told, there's stories in those FBI files that have not been released by the Department of Justice and which they must release because of the subpoena, or whether they are stories of victims that have not yet come forward, we will hold you all accountable. There happens to be a very powerful person at the top who doesn't want these stories out. And whatever justice looks like in the coming days and weeks and years, we will follow every thread. We will follow every piece of evidence. We will follow every bank record. We will follow every investigation. We will follow every court order. And we will make sure that those who were abused by these men are held accountable.
She said it's a cover-up and all you motherfuckers are involved. Every single last one of y'all. The government, foreign countries, foreign actors, the Republicans. As we clearly see, the Democrats are the ones fighting for these Epstein files and not the Republicans. Anybody in them will see your day. She said this shit goes all the way to the top. And we know who's sitting at the top of this shit pile. Yes, Dookie Booty. She said y'all been letting these rich motherfuckers slide for way too fucking long. And that shit about to stop. Y'all just letting these motherfuckers get away with every fucking thing just because they got fucking money. And now we got hundreds of thousands of women who have suffered because y'all let these rich motherfuckers get away with shit just because they got fucking money. And to the DOJ, y'all need to drop them motherfucking files like that subpoena told y'all to do. Stop playing with us and releasing little bits by bits. Release all the files unredacted now. She said we about to follow every single little breadcrumb. And wherever that shit leads us, that motherfucker will be held accountable. But this shit is fucking huge. This has the potential to take down a whole...
Okay, I need to bring up this theory that's been brought up to me a couple times now, and I went down the rabbit hole, and I'm going to be speculating, obviously. This is just a theory, but I'm going to share with you what I found. So in this picture, we obviously have 3 different girls, and then there's Brett Ratner, Jeffrey, you can barely see him in between the 2 girls, and Jean-Luc Brunel. We know Jean-Luc Brunel was the modeling agent who was providing girls to Jeffrey, and a co-conspirator who was charged with basically the same crimes as him in Paris, and passed away under the exact same circumstances as Jeffrey in his cell. And then, as you guys know, Brett Ratner is the disgraced Hollywood movie director who came out of retirement after 12 years to direct the Melania documentary that had an ungodly budget of $40 million. Another thing notable to know about Brett Ratner is after he was accused of SA on multiple occasions by multiple different people, Brett Ratner immigrated to the blue and white state. Also notable, Brett Ratner is a close friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, and in 2023, Benjamin Netanyahu invited Brett Ratner to the UN General Assembly to listen to his speech. Now, back to this photo. So when these photos of Brett Ratner and these girls and Jeffrey and Jean-Luc Brunel came out a couple of months ago, he went on to television to kind of explain himself. Brett Ratner tried to explain himself and absolve himself from wrongdoing by stating that the woman in this photo was his fiance at the time. And in case you were not aware, Brett Ratner was engaged and in a 13-year relationship with actress Rebecca Gayheart. She is the woman who was married and had children with the actor Eric Dane, who just passed away from ALS. But basically, he contended that the woman in this photo was his fiance. He never did anything wrong with any girls or women. But there has been some speculation, and this is just speculation, that the woman who is next to Brett Ratner in this photo is Melania. And while the woman in the photo could be Rebecca Gayheart, I don't know for sure, I do think it's noticeable that Rebecca Gayheart and the woman in that photo have distinctly different hairlines, but that could not mean anything. Maybe she was just trying a different style that day. I think a lot of this theory has to do with the hairline, and Melania Trump's is noticeably very similar and was a very similar hair color. And while a hairline doesn't really give us a lot to go off of, it is noticeable that some of the jewelry that the woman in this photo is wearing is very similar to the jewelry that Melania was wearing in this era. Right here we have a gold watch or bracelet, maybe similar to the gold watch or bracelet that she's wearing in this photo. And then if you look closely in this mangled mess of arms, you can see that the girl in this photo is wearing a white band, a white ring on her finger. finger, which is very similar to a ring that Melania wore on her finger frequently when she first met Donald Trump. So just some interesting observations, just a theory, just speculation, nothing definitive. But it does make me think about that $40 million budget on the Melania documentary. And while we obviously know that a portion of that money went directly into the bank accounts of Donald Trump and Melania, was a portion of that money hush money for Netanyahu's friend, Brett Ratner, to ensure he never said a word about anything he knew about Jeffrey or anyone else's connections to Jeffrey. Again, just a theory, but I've been ruminating on it, so I figured I needed to talk about it. But that's all I have for you guys right now, and let me know what you think in the comments.
And that is the list that the victims are starting to put out. Yes, the victims are tired of the DOJ's bullshit and are starting to name their abusers themselves. As you can see here, one of the victims says, I provided the list. My abusers include, but are not limited to, Elon Musk. Uh-oh, Elon, you got some splaining to do. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and we have absolutely groundbreaking news today. If you haven't seen last night, the internet went absolutely ablaze with the biggest announcement we've gotten regarding the e-files since the start of this whole thing. Yes, under Pam Bondi's leadership, Donald Trump's guidance, the most transparent Department of Justice and presidency in U.S. history just released all of the Epstein files completely unredacted. No more redactions for the perpetrators, for the pedophiles, real transparency. At least that's what all the MAGA influencers all put out with the exact same tweet last night. Did it turn out to be true? No, actually, they didn't put out anything. There's nothing unredacted other than one email. We'll show you that in a little bit. And yes, this is just another case of fooled ya a fucking again. Actually pretty hilarious. What the Department of Justice did put out was this bizarre list of names with zero context that we're also going to take a look at because there's some hilarious fucking names on there. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let's jump into it. Let's talk about it.
The July 2025 memo from your Department of Justice stated, quote, we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. These two photos, please put the photos back up. These two photos staring you in the face are evidence of a crime and more than enough evidence to predicate an investigation against former Prince Andrew. So I ask you, Attorney General Pam Bondi, why did you shut down this investigation last July, and why have you not prosecuted former Prince Andrew?
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before.
I agree with you.
You twice.
I've been claiming my time. I agree with you. I agree with you. During the Biden administration, I called for people looking at Epstein files. Merrick Garland dropped the ball, as did Attorney General Bill Barr, as did Alex Acosta, a whole string of failures. But you are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them. So I want to move on to another man.
Can I answer
Donald
that,
Trump.
though?
I want to move on to another
Can I
question.
answer your question about protecting
You answered
Prince
the
Andrew?
question.
You're saying no. I love this.
I want to discuss another man, Donald Trump, who is all over the Epstein files, like former Prince. Here's the video. Like former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files
I'm reclaiming my time.
be
I got your
released.
answer. You said there's no evidence.
President Trump asked
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop the clock. The legislation. This is
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath. And this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of a crime. I'm showing you, here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop the limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation. And as we say here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has expired.
May I respond?
Yeah, I don't know how you respond. No one can.
I did not ask a question,
He
Ms.
doesn't
You're
want
allowed
to talk
to.
about
I did
the
not ask a
horrific
question.
crime in California. He does not want to talk about
I did not ask a
crime
question.
in his state.
She can't just ad lib stuff. I did not ask a question.
Meeting will be in order. The gentleman has yielded back his time. I think our next witness will be more than happy to let the Attorney General
Madam
respond.
Attorney General, would you like to?
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 5 minutes.
You have a few minutes to respond.
Thank you, Congressman. This is what Congressman Liu didn't want to talk about. He didn't want to talk about all the crime that is happening in his state. California refuses to honor detainees because of its dangerous sanctuary city policies. The refusal means California has released 4,561 criminal illegal aliens onto its street. The crimes of these aliens include 31 homicides, 661 assaults, 574 burglaries, 184 robberies, 1,489 dangerous drug offenses, 379 weapons offenses, and 234 sexual predator offenses. That's why they are deflecting. That's why they're trying to talk about the Epstein files. That's currently happening in his home state.
The fact that Melania Trump is all over the Epstein files is now becoming a massive legal nightmare for her. Melania tried to sue Donald Trump's biographer, Michael Wolff, for $1 billion to shut him up. But instead of silencing him, she has accidentally opened the door for her own secrets to be exposed in federal court. She is trying to run to Florida to avoid New York judges, claiming she doesn't live in NYC. But Michael Wolff just dropped a filing with receipts that prove otherwise, and it involves the Epstein files. Here's the bizarre legal game being played. Melania removed the lawsuit to federal court and wants to transfer it to Florida, likely hoping for a judge like Aileen Cannon. She claims New York isn't her home, but Wolff's lawyers are saying, not so fast. They claim her Florida residency is a scheme. They point out that Barron goes to NYU, her doctors, dentist, hairstylist, and makeup artist are all in New York. And get this, she allegedly has her own separate apartment in Trump Tower, room 33H, while Donald is in the penthouse on the 66th floor. She avoids him even in their own building. But here is where it gets dark. Wolff is using the Epstein files to prove Melania's deep ties to New York. In the court filing, they reference emails where Ghislaine Maxwell calls Melania Sweet Pea, and Melania calls her G. They discuss meeting up in New York. There's even an FBI 302 report noting that Epstein introduced Melania to Donald Trump, something Melania denied and threatened to sue over. Now, because she filed this lawsuit, all of these connections are fair game for discovery. It gets even funnier. Wolff's lawyers are using Melania's own documentary against her. They point out that the production crew was based in New York, and the movie itself shows her life centering around the city. She publicly stated in 2024 at Madison Square Garden, "This is my hometown." Wolff argues you can't tell the public New York is your home for applause and then tell a judge you don't live there to avoid a lawsuit. It's a total contradiction. And while the Trumps are fighting these legal battles, the administration is making wild moves elsewhere. Reports show Trump has canceled enough clean energy projects to power 13 million homes, driving up electricity bills. They literally announced a new mascot for coal called Coal Lee. You can't make this stuff up. They are prioritizing donors over your utility bills while distracted by these massive personal scandals. So what happens next? If the judge keeps this case in New York, Melania Trump might be forced to sit for a deposition. She could be asked under oath about the Sweet Pea emails, her relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, and how she really met Donald Trump. She wanted $1 billion, but she might have just bought herself a ticket to the witness stand. What do you think? Did she make a huge mistake suing Michael Wolff? Let me know in the comments.
Major news just dropped in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Several of the survivors are now suing Pam Bondi. A group of Epstein survivors led by Maria Farmer have filed a lawsuit against former state general attorney Pam Bondi. The allegation is that key evidence may have went missing during the early on handling of the Epstein cases. Early reports are that key information may have been concealed during the early handlings of this Epstein investigation. And the survivors are saying they've currently spent more than $1.1 million collectively seeking accountability.
And they argued decisions made during the original investigation helped Jeffrey Epstein avoid much more appropriate serious charges for years. If the lawsuit moves forward, it could reopen a lot of unanswered questions about how the Epstein case was handled and whether powerful people helped shield him from justice. Because for many of the victims, the biggest question isn't what Epstein did. It's how he got away with it for so long and what asshole was it that helped cover it up for him. Now courts have to decide whether key opportunities for justice.
Pam Bondi's on the Epstein list. Yeah, I'm going to say something nobody's ever said. Pam Bondi's on the Epstein list, and the DOJ is on the Epstein list. And I'm going to point out 6 different types of people on that list that have nothing to do with sexual predators or victims. And Pam Bondi is one of them, and so are those DOJ people. You ready? You ready? Because this is going to be big. This is going to blow your mind. Listen to this whole video. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how Donald Trump's going to get impeached. You ready? We ready? Let's go. So first of all, let's walk ourselves back. Do you know who the Attorney General for Florida was when they first prosecuted Epstein and then they gave him that deal where they wouldn't prosecute him? In other words, the feds gave him a deal. And the Attorney General for Florida refused to pursue this deal and break it down because there were 80 victims who said, no, this man has raped us. And sure enough, Epstein got a deal and got it out. You know who could have challenged that? The Attorney General. You know who the Attorney General for Florida was? You guessed it. Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi got political contributions from Trump, and she stepped from Trump. He was paying off this woman to protect his friend. I swear to God, this is real. This is mind-blowing. She's been covering for this industry for decades now. Not only through Attorney General, but through her being an attorney for several other people. I want to point out 6 different types of people, and Pam Bondi's one of them. And here's the thing I'm going to break down to you. This is why they're afraid. There are 6 different types of people beyond, of course, the predator and the victim. And there's 3 different types of markets and 3 economic levels. I'm going to break it down to you because it's not just the billionaires and millionaires. Y'all, it's in your neighborhood. It's in your neighborhood. It's in my neighborhood. It's in everybody's neighborhood. You understand? No, real talk. So let's talk. There are 3 different economies. There's the low end, there's the mid tier, and then there's the wealthy. And I want you to understand, this whole grooming Inc., this whole movement of people, it happens across roughly 4 to 5 categories. There's drugs, guns. There's sexual trafficking. Okay, and the biggest one is the money. Oh, by the way, there's a 5th one, which is really weird, exotic stuff that move along luxury planes and everything. So we're talking, when I say exotic, I'm talking about everything from organs internationally to babies, selling babies, to exotic animals. You want to have somebody get that weird, like tiger or snake or whatever that's not even in the country? That's what I'm talking about. They're moving that stuff. But the main thing you need to pay attention to is the money. Because that
I just introduced articles of impeachment against Pam Bondi. She has been obstructing justice, weaponizing the DOJ against Trump's political enemies, and just breaking the law. It's time that she is held accountable. Last summer, I forced a bipartisan motion to subpoena the DOJ and Bondi herself. We demanded the full, unredacted Epstein files, but for the identities of survivors. Since then, Bondi has refused to release the full files in violation of both our subpoena and the law, and her DOJ even hid files on survivors who reported abuse by President Trump. We live in a country where we have one reality for everyday people and another for the rich, the well-connected, and the well-protected. And that cannot continue to be our reality. Pam Bondi deserves to be held accountable, but this is also about what we want our government to be and who we want it to work for. Do we want our institutions to get away with protecting the wealthy and powerful, or do we want our government working for the people, fighting for justice for survivors, and standing with us when powerful people break the law? This is our chance to get justice, to hold people accountable who time and again have gotten away with screwing us over. So if you're mad right now, if you're frustrated thinking that the people in power aren't listening to you, or if you're pissed off because every single day in the news you see another billionaire getting richer while you're struggling to get by, then just know that I'm right there with you. We're starting with Pam Bondi, but we won't stop until anyone responsible for this cover-up, for abusing women and girls, exploiting working people, and breaking the law is held accountable, no matter their title, their political party, or how rich they are.
Republicans have been circulating this piece of misinformation for far too long for me not to say anything at this point. Let's get the facts straight. No federal court ordered Texas to redraw its maps mid-census redistricting. No court did that. What did happen was Pam Bondi's Justice Department sent Governor Abbott a letter claiming that 4 of their districts were coalition districts and unconstitutional, and they threatened legal action as a result. Days later, Governor Abbott took this upon himself to ask the legislature to redraw the maps. No court order was involved in this process. This is Pam Bondi, Attorney General, or rather I should say former Attorney General by Pam. But she is accountable to the president. She was appointed by Donald Trump to serve as Attorney General. So don't you think there's political motives? This was not a nonpartisan judicial command from the courts. This was from the DOJ. So let's get the facts straight.
Bad news for Pam Bondi, as the former Attorney General who was let go in disgrace by Donald Trump is set to face potential contemptment charges from Congress if she does not comply and come in for a hearing on Tuesday of this week. Attorney General Pam Bondi has received a subpoena and is forced to testify in front of the House Oversight Committee over her role in the Epstein files cover-up and the botched release. Mind you, the Epstein files were supposed to be released in full back in December, and less than half the total files have been released. Of the files that have been released, you know very well that the files have not been fully released and most pages are redacted. Crooked Pam Bondi is trying to weasel her way out of going into Congress by claiming that she was subpoenaed as Attorney General, when in reality, she was subpoenaed as Pam Bondi. Donald Trump may have tried to fire her to prevent her from going into Congress and testifying, but that plan will fail if Congress holds her in contempt and presses possible criminal charges against her for failing to comply with the law.
And that said, today, April 9, Melania came out and she started berating news agencies and called out specific people by name for associating her with, wait for it, Epstein. So her and her lawyers are making a case out of this. And they don't really have to make it. All they got to do is go find all the clips of everything that's been said about Melania and also her husband. So if she's coming after those people for not being associated with Epstein in a way that they claim she is associated, then by default, she's calling to have her husband investigated as well. she's calling, Melania is, she's calling for the victims of Epstein to be able to come into Congress and tell their stories and tell who's who in the zoo. So she's calling to have that done.
Breaking news. Ethics charges have been filed in Florida with the Florida bar against U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. Approximately 70 law professors, attorneys, and Florida Supreme Court justices that are retired filed an ethics complaint today, 23 pages, with the Florida Bar Association. In this complaint, they basically say that Bondi, they accuse her of violating her ethical duties as U.S. Attorney General, that she has committed serious professional misconduct, and that she threatens the rule of law and the administration of justice as Attorney General. Now, she is a licensed attorney in Florida, and it is my understanding if they were to rule against her, they could technically go as far as disbarring her and taking her license in Florida. I can't say what's going to happen yet, but this is a 23-page complaint that will be investigated by the Florida Bar. This is not DeSantis. This is not the state doing it. This is the Florida Bar Association. And so we'll have to wait and see what they do. I know with all the divorce between Elon and Donald Trump going on today that you all may have missed this, but this was breaking today too. Love you for my Democrats, my MAGAs, my crazies, my cuckoos, and my burned out light bulbs. Again, an ethics complaint has been filed against U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi here in Florida with the Florida Bar. There you have it. I'd love to hear what you think.
Thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.